Good morning. Today is Sunday, so happy Sunday. Our common construct, human construct. Sunday, August 6th, year 2017, in arbitrarily agreed upon reality of time. Well, in any case, happy Sunday, and I'm very happy to be with you. And today's question is from Richa. I actually used her question to explain current theories of consciousness, and also to explain how your beliefs shape your reality. So this may take a bit of time, and you might have to be a little patient in order for you to get through what I'm saying today. And you might have to also come back to this video and perhaps share it with others so that you can expand your understanding and also elaborate on your own understanding of reality. But first, the question from Richa. The dictionary definition of consciousness is the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. Okay, that's a good start. That's a good start, but it's not enough. Okay. Rupert Spira defines consciousness as that in which all experience occurs, all experience is known, and out of which all experience is made. Now, I have elaborated on this definition in other videos, so you might want to look at those videos, or you might want to go to Rupert Spira's website or look at his YouTube videos for a very good elaboration of that definition. Consciousness is that in which all experience occurs, all experience is known, and out of which all experience is made. Dan Siegel, a neuropsychiatrist at UCLA, defines consciousness as the knowing element in all experience. And if you go into Eastern wisdom traditions, there is consciousness with experience, and there is consciousness in the absence of experience. So there is something called pure consciousness, which is the potential for experience, all possible experience. So consciousness is the immeasurable potential for all experience, infinite potential, the immeasurable potential for all that was, all that is, and all that will ever be. And so, it is your, whichever view you have or whatever definition you adopt, even unconsciously you're influenced by your beliefs about reality, which reside, of course, in consciousness alone. So let me then elaborate a little bit on current theories of consciousness. So one of the popular theories of consciousness is called dualism. Dualism goes back to, in the Western world of philosophy, goes back to Descartes, René Descartes. As you know, Descartes is known for, I think, therefore I am. Now, of course, I disagree with that, and many others do, because before you think, you have to be. So it's the other way around. I am, therefore I think. instead of I think, therefore I am, therefore I think. Anyway, the dualistic worldview says that there are two realms of existence, mental and spiritual, one, and physical, the other. The problem with that worldview is that it is not scientifically valid. If there are two worlds, spiritual and mental on the one side and physical on the other side, then how do those two interact? How do you even lift your arm? Because the intention to lift your arm is a mental event, and the lifting of the arm is a so-called physical event. So dualism also violates the laws of conservation of energy. Where is the energy coming from to convert a mental event into a physical event? So dualism is out. And then there are various kinds of monism. Monism means there's only one reality. So one of the monisms is what is called idealistic monism or monistic idealism. That goes back all the way to Plato, who said the world is essentially ideas, and these mental constructs, these archetypes, these mental shapes and forms determine our experience of reality. So you can say Plato was the first monist, and then there was Bishop Berkeley, and there have been many monistic idealists, or many people who subscribe to monistic idealism. But then there is a third way of looking at monism, and that is physical monism, which means that the world and everything contained in it is physical. Everything that we call reality is physical. So there's only one reality, and it's physical. This physicalist view, as it's often called, runs into a problem called the hard problem of consciousness. If the world is made up of atoms and molecules, how do they learn to think? How do they learn to imagine? How do they learn to introspect? Why do molecules and emotions come together? How? It's called the hard problem of consciousness. How does the brain, which is a physical object, produce ideas, thoughts, insight, intuition, introspection, imagination, intention, creativity, desire, memory? So you see, the physicalist world runs, the physicalist notion of reality also comes to be problematic. We cannot explain any thing that we call mental activity or that we call consciousness from a physicalist point of view as well. So, as I said, idealism in a sense is a stronger argument for reality than physicalist ontologies. Ontology means our assumption of what is the basic fundamental reality of nature. So dualism, monistic idealism, monistic physicalism. Then there's a fourth theory that is getting very popular these days, and that is called panpsychism. So panpsychism, which is actually a lot of people are subscribing to that, including very good scientists. And panpsychism is a doctrine that says everything material, however small, has an element of individual consciousness. So atoms and molecules are individually conscious. This is, believe it or not, a very popular theory right now. Panpsychism, you can look it up. And essentially panpsychism is also a physicalist argument for reality, because it assumes the existence of physical matter. It assumes the existence of physical matter and does not perhaps realize that matter is the interpretation of experience and sense perceptions in consciousness. So, one of the popular theorists about panpsychism is the MIT mathematician physicist Tegmark, and he made headlines recently when he said that consciousness is organized matter. I did write to him asking him, why isn't the other way around? Why isn't matter organized consciousness? And I never heard back from him. So anyway, panpsychism is a popular theory these days. And then, of course, there was the great German philosopher Immanuel Kant, who separated noumena from phenomena. So he called noumena the thing in itself and phenomena the appearance of the thing in itself. You can look up Immanuel Kant, or maybe you're familiar with him, but he basically did distinguish perceived reality from fundamental reality. At the moment, there's another theory of consciousness which is very popular. It is called the integrated information theory of Tononi. Aurora Carlson, 26 others shared the video. Thank you, Aurora. You're a great champion, and so are you all sharing this video. Okay, so the integrated information theory of consciousness says that consciousness is a product of states of information. It's quite complex, and you would have to actually look up Tononi and read his book called Phi, as the symbol Phi, the Greek symbol Phi, to fully understand the integrated theory of consciousness. So those are some of the most popular theories. There are also certain problems in consciousness research known as the combination problem or the binding problem. The binding problem is as follows. Each part of our brain processes input from the different senses, the sense of sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. Each part of our brain processes these separately. Okay, so the brain is divided into many parts, and each part processes not only sensory perception separately, but at different rates. And yet we do not experience reality as divided. We experience it as a unified whole. So this is called the binding problem. Nobody understands how to solve the binding problem at the moment. And then there is something which is an elaboration of the binding problem called the combination problem, which says how does emotion and thought and perception come together as a unified experience. If different parts of the brain are doing different things at different rates, then how do these different parts integrate into a unified experience of thought, feeling, images, perceptions, all as a unified experience? Okay, so this is referred to as the combination problem. Okay, so as you can see already, there are so many theories about how reality is conceived and structured and how consciousness comes about, because without consciousness there would be no experience. And how do we resolve these different theories of consciousness? And what does it say about our personal beliefs and our experiences of that which we call reality? How do our personal beliefs shape our reality? I'll add one more thing to this whole explanation I've given thus far, which is that neuroscientists are slowly coming to the conclusion that we do not experience reality as it is. We experience our models of reality in our consciousness. Now, I will add to that even that which we call the brain is a model of reality. The brain is a word that humans have invented for a shape, a form, a texture, and a sense experience. And right now we're trying to understand how sense experience is created to begin with. So what is my view on all of that, and why do I think that view will slowly gain popularity, and why do I think that view is the correct view? Why do I think that? Well, I'll come back to that in 15 seconds. So I'm back here. So what is my view? And before that, I should say that it is not necessarily my view. It's a view that has been known in Eastern wisdom traditions for a very, very long time. It's the view of Advaita. Advaita, which means non-duality. That the world appears dual, me and the other. But in reality, there is only one essence to all reality. So there is one substance. And we can't even call it a substance because it is immaterial. And that one substance is consciousness, which takes on the appearance of many substances. I have given this analogy before, but think of water, right? So water can appear as vapor, as a cloud, as a glacier, as many statues of ice, as the ocean, as teardrops, as dewdrops, as clouds, rivers, oceans, rivulets, and so many other appearances. So many other appearances. And these appearances are still the appearances, in the analogy I gave you, the appearances of water. That water appears in so many forms. Deborah Cooper, different forms. Yes, water appears in several forms. And these forms are all essentially water. Even as a wave arises and a wave appears and the wave subsides in the ocean, it's water. It's water before it arises. It's water as it arises. and it's water when it disappears back into the ocean. So appearance, which is evanescent, impermanent, temporary, momentary, is something that consciousness takes on. And once consciousness takes on this appearance, then we mistake the appearance for the reality. In fact, there is only one being, which we can say therefore that non-duality assumes a non-physicalist ontology. Ontology is the philosophical term that addresses the nature of being. So the two most important branches of philosophy are ontology, what is the nature of being, and the other is called epistemology, which is how do we know what we know, what are the limits of knowing, can humans know everything? If our sensory perception takes in less than 1/10 of a trillionth of what's out there, or what we assume is out there, how do we know what's really out there? Okay, so there are lots of problems with mistaking appearance for reality. So again, non-duality is based on the assumption that the nature of the world, of the universe, is consciousness, and everything else, whether it's thoughts or emotions or perceptions, they are an arising and a subsiding in that one being. And that one being is you and me without separation. You and me without separation. So, I was having this argument with a physicalist whom I'd met at a conference recently, the Science of Consciousness conference. And he's an academic, and he comes from a prestigious university in California, and he is a subscriber to what he calls scientific materialism, which, by the way, is a form of naive realism. So realism goes back all the way to Aristotle, who said the world that we see, the world that appears in our awareness, is the real world. The world is independent of our experience of it. So that kind of realism goes under many terms: scientific realism, representational realism, naive realism. And in fact, all types of realism are in a way naive realism, because we know, even from a scientific point of view today, that what we experience is not reality but models of reality. And when we give brain explanations to reality, we are yet still creating another model of reality. The brain itself is a model based on our perceptual experience of a shape and a form and a texture and a smell that we call the brain. So as I was having this argument, or this what you might say debate with my academic physicalist friend, I asked my friend Anup Kumar, with whom I've written a couple of articles, to weigh in. And he wrote a very intelligent and a very beautiful response to the neuroscientist that we both believe is a naive realist. So if you're a little patient, I'm going to read Anup Kumar's email here, which is very lucid and very clear. So with your indulgence, here is Anup Kumar's email to my physicalist, scientist, neuroscientist, to my physicalist, neuroscientist friend, academic friend. So this is what Anup writes. He says, first let's distinguish non-duality and idealism. Idealism says that the world is a mental experience. The world is essentially mind. This is one of the preliminary steps on the way to non-duality. After recognizing the world is indeed mental, the adventurer has to then inquire into the nature of the mind. What is the mind after all? And through meditative research comes to know that mind too is merely an appearance, like the shadow that appears when you stand in the sun. By the way, that's a very Platonic allegory, as you may have read Plato's description of men in the cave. The mind is the movement of consciousness or awareness or being. Brahman, take your pick. And non-duality says that consciousness alone exists. It is uncompromising in this statement. There's no wiggle room. Consciousness alone is. The corollary, it adds, is that all appearance, including the mental world of idealism, is false. It is very particular in saying false, although we often casually translate it as unreal. False implies that what appears to be is not. Unreal is difficult to understand because the naive realist or scientific realist will reply, but I experience it. It has some reality because he doesn't yet see that the identity I, and the perceived it are merely movements of the mind with no intrinsic substantiality. Both the personal I and the experience that the personal I are having are movements of the mind with no intrinsic substantiality. The best example is the latest dream you had. If we had to describe your dream while the three of us were within that dream, it would be best to call it false. Calling it unreal would seem to be too much of a stretch. After all, we would be experiencing it. But on waking, we would all agree, perhaps, that it was unreal. Monist idealism takes experience as primary and says all experience is mental. It is a good start. Non-duality says experience is a movement of the mind. When mind stills, reality reveals itself as pure consciousness alone, pristine, naked, infinite, untouched, and untouchable by experience. This is Brahman, in which there are no parts, no mind. In my understanding, Anup says, idealism does not differentiate mind from consciousness. Yet the two are so different that they may as well be unrelated. One is appearance, the other is reality. Anup goes on to say, I'm working up to your primary question. Please allow me to establish some preliminary lines of reasoning first. There indeed is no physical explanation for anything. Physical is generally defined as relating to the body as opposed to mind, or relating to that which is perceived through the senses. This is simply a categorizing of mental experience. What does the word physical really mean? The realist is duped by the experience of things feeling hard or seeing something outside or away from himself, herself in reality. These are merely mental notions. All explanations are characteristics of the mind, a subcategory of which we call physical without knowing the ontology of the so-called physical world. Science is a mental process of observing, hypothesizing, experimenting, and drawing conclusions. Even if we incorrectly assume an external physical world, it should be clear that the scientific method is processed in and by the minds of scientists. Science is a mental activity. There is no independent physical reality. All appearances are mental, and all mentality is the apparent movement of consciousness. When the mind moves, it polarizes. This is the nature of the mind. The polarity is what creates mental notions of a four-dimensional world. Three of the most fundamental mental movements are space, here versus there, time, now versus then, and identity, me versus you or the world. These are not independently real. They come and go in consciousness. In deep sleep, the polarity disappears. So too, in the deep meditative state, which is first practiced and later becomes a new baseline, polarity disappears. In non-duality, the sense of identity is not localized. If I is not localized, then you loses meaning. All existence is known as the infinite I. Congratulations, Anup. I'm going to send this podcast to you so you can see how much I appreciate your lucidity and clarity. To continue, if the mental movement here versus there is believed to be real, the person experiences internality and externality. He experiences a wall that separates him from the world along with the accompanying neuroses and mental suffering, often unrecognized because it is the baseline in society. Yeah, it is the hypnosis of social conditioning, which I've said many times. This is the basis for your question about intersubjective experience, which assumes separation. If there is no separation, there is no question about intersubjective experience, because at the level of the total mind, there is no intersubjective experience. There is only mind, which differentiates into local identities and local experience. Part of that experience is a dividing wall between you and me. The dividing wall does not divide the entire mind, only part of it. Hence, some experience is shared and some isn't. The mind we experience is layered. You cannot read my mind and I cannot read your mind unless we practice. As individuals, we have notions of local identity that seem to separate our private mental experiences, thoughts, feelings, etc. from the outside world. But the mind is not only in the individual. Look all around you. Now look within you. All that you experience, including the nebulous line between outside and inside, is mind, monistic idealism. This must be the starting point for clear understanding. You wrote, he's replying to the scientist, scientific realism acknowledges that our perceptions are not always very accurate in terms of what is really out there, but we still reasonably infer that there is indeed a world out there that exists independently of us. So now Anup responds, it is not that our perceptions are not always an accurate portrayal of reality, it is that our perceptions are never reality itself. Our perceptions are an infinitesimal glimpse into reality. Our eyes perceive wavelengths between 300 and 700 nanometers, which is, as I said earlier, a tenth of a trillionth of the vast expanse of electromagnetic energy. Imagine how small a slice we are seeing. Multiple that by our five senses, and then consider that five senses are all we experience. How many more senses might there be for other species that are simply unrecognizable to us? Further, consider that any perception, no matter how refined and comprehensive, is still a representation or interpretation of reality. This is mind-boggling. Perception does not approach reality in the slightest. Perception does not approach reality in the slightest. That's why I have referred to it and many others as an evanescent dream. They both represent a mind locked in the world of perception with no way out. The favored method is to enhance perceptions. And many neuroscientists are doing that, which is simply a way to chase our tail longer by seeing new and exciting perceptions. To know truth, perception has to be seen through, not enhanced. However, Anup says, I do think some of the TED Talks on perception and experiences of enhancing perception can be helpful in showing us that there is much more to the universe than what we think. But such experiences must guide us to redirect our attention, otherwise we're in for more of the same, and this adding this, false reality. Neither non-duality nor idealism is needed to refute naive and scientific realism. Only reason is needed. Hope this helps. So thank you, Anup, for this clarity. Thank you, Anup, for this clarity. Very, very clear and lucid. So what is reality? Reality is the you, independent of all perceptions, independent of all conceptions, independent of all thought. But how you think of it influences your experience of it. The real you has no name, has no form, doesn't occupy space, doesn't exist in time, is eternal, but without it, you would have no experience of that which has name or form. The real you is pure consciousness. And from there you conceive, construct, govern, and become what humans call the universe. And that is the fundamental message of you are the universe, discovering your cosmic self and how it matters. So thank you very much for your patience. I saw that some of you, Goddesses and Rishikesh and Carla Hernandez and Richa Kumar, who asked the question, are still hanging in there for this very long explanation. But it'll be on the internet and you can come back to it, revisit it, comment on it, and engage with me on it. Okay? So I'll end this with one statement. If you can see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, think about it, conceptualize it, imagine it, then it's not the real reality. The real reality is that without which you cannot conceive, imagine, think, perceive, or experience any form or any phenomenon. Ultimately, all form is phenomenon, and all phenomenon is the arising and subsiding of you, pure consciousness, modifying itself into sense perceptions, sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, and calling it mind, body, universe. You're it, baby. There's nothing else. Take care.